Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to Design Advisory Panel, October 9th, 2025. Before we begin, could I just get a motion to adopt the agenda as proposed for today? Angie? Seconder Harry, thank you. All in favor? Alex, Angie, Harry, thank you. And Jessica, yeah. Okay, thank you. Before we proceed further, we have two sets of minutes to adopt. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes as presented for September 11th at 5:01 p.m.? Harry? Is anybody else? Can somebody second? Alex, seconder, Jessica, okay, and all in favor? Great, okay. And second sets of minutes, September 5th, 25th at 5:10 p.m. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes as presented? Angie, seconder Harry, all in favor? Great, thank you very much. Okay, this evening we have two presentations. We have a personal care facility on 1030 Victoria Road. And we also have a 160-unit multifamily development on 309 Hillcrest Avenue. Lania, our manager of current planning, will introduce, followed by the presentation. Followed by an opportunity for panel to ask the city questions, so Lania directly, and then followed by panel questions, recommendations, and finally a vote. So with that, Lania, please proceed with the introduction.
Madam Chair, I'll just step out at this point for the first presentation due to potential for a conflict of interest, because the first presentation project that the company that I work for is working on. So I'll step out and I'll join in for the second presentation.
Thank you, Angie. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And before I begin, I'd just like to request that if you are an applicant or presenter this evening, just your on screen for the purpose of the meeting, if you can please change your display name to have your first and last name, that would be great. Thank you, everyone. The first development permit application I'm introducing this evening is DP 1395 for a supportive housing development consisting of 60 studio units. The property is undergoing a concurrent subdivision and rezoning application to allow the proposed personal care facility as a site-specific use in the existing industrial high-tech industrial I3 zone. The property is designated within development permit area number 4, abandoned mine workings hazards, and also development permit area 8 for form and character. As such, the city's form and character design guidelines apply. I'm happy to take any questions following the applicant's presentation, and also just a note, no variances have been identified at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Lania, for the introduction. And who will be presenting this evening?
Kaylin Patmore from S2 Architecture.
Okay, please go ahead, Kaylin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so good evening, members of the Design Advisory Panel, city staff, and all those in attendance. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight about a supportive housing development that is being proposed for 1030 Old Victoria Road, also known as Mackenzie Road Supportive Housing. The project aims to assist with reinforcing the endeavor to bridge the gap of homelessness and those at risk of homelessness within the city of Nanaimo. So getting into the context, located in the neighborhood of Chase River, our site sits just adjacent to residential properties, some undeveloped vegetated land to the immediate southeast, some forested area, and commercial properties. And if we take a closer look, our site is situated to the south of Petroglyph Park and is nestled between the Trans-Canada or Island Highway to the north and Old Victoria Road to the south. In conjunction with, as was mentioned, with a rezoning application, the lot has been subdivided into 2 areas. The southernmost portion is home to a temporary housing setup called Hearth, which is currently housing many of the future tenants to our proposed supportive housing development. The site design is largely focused on integrating the project with safety and privacy in mind. Items which are addressed through the overall design, building orientation, landscape screening, and access control. So setting the building back into the site provides an inherent natural buffer from Mackenzie Road and from the adjacent residences. Further, the building is oriented across the site from northeast to southwest, which utilizes the natural separation created by the placement of the building relative to the site. This placement limits the access points between the front and the rear spaces and reinforces that security requirement. So the site is accessed via a 2-way drive aisle loop, which is just off Mackenzie Road, that provides for convenient, accessible connection to the principal entrance of the building, which also guides the vehicular traffic into the surface parking area, where there are 12 parking stalls, including 2 barrier-free stalls and 4 EV stalls. And just beyond the parking are 2 loading stalls conveniently located for service vehicles, for waste and recycling pickup, as well as any deliveries for the commercial kitchen. Design consideration for safe and distinct pedestrian and vehicular circulation are inherent to the site layout, and as such, a widened pedestrian walkway and landscape buffers serve to reinforce this separation. So the pedestrian connection also begins back at Mackenzie Road and follows a widened, well-lit walkway to the covered main entrance, which provides a welcoming pedestrian approach. So this covered condition continues along the northern portion of the front facade and is mirrored on the back side of the building as well. Landscape buffers have been incorporated to separate the vehicular realms and the pedestrian walkway to the north. And on the south, a landscape buffer separates the walkway that leads to the e-mobility device storage enclosure from the portion of the building that houses several tenant suites. The substantial outdoor amenity area to the southeast of the site is accessed via the main building only, by the entrance, which is in essence, and it becomes an extension of the indoor common area. So our landscape architect will elaborate on this area in a few moments, but I would like to get into the building design. So this project proposes 60 studio units over a 4-story traditional wood frame construction building and comprises a mix of accessible, adaptable, and standard suite types to address unique situations of each tenant. The main floor houses all of the accessible units on the east end of the floor plate and incorporates a combination of staff spaces, building services, tenant support spaces, and amenities, including a commercial kitchen, a dining space, and lounge area. The subsequent typical floors stack throughout the building, with floors 2 through 4 encompassing the remaining 54 suites, which are distributed fairly evenly across the floor plate from the centrally located elevator core. Each level incorporates glazing at each end of the corridor, as well as the stairwells, to bring light into the space and enhance the user experience. And getting into some character and massing. So the proposed supportive housing development strives for a building character that is complementary to the building site or surrounding site and weaves form and function into the proposed design. So in line with the industrial designated area, a simple yet sophisticated architectural form and palette of materials was developed. Consideration for building materials focused on the wood construction, the durability, and sustainability to produce a design that respects both budget, code, and context. A simple palette of materials is combined with the strategic repetition of elements to create a texture and rhythm of visual interest. The facade treatment continues around the entirety of the building, alternating between the juxtaposing dark and light vertical wood planks, creating a dynamic, balanced facade. The white panels assist to emphasize the glazing and reinforce the rhythmic pattern. The wood tone material has been proposed to enhance the connection of the building's natural character to the surrounding natural environment. And now we have a series of renderings to illustrate the design intent, pairing the building design and materials with the site design. So the front of the building here depicts primarily the light wood tone, which serves as a somewhat of a base for the rhythm of the windows. with a focus on creating a welcoming, covered, and pedestrian-friendly entry conditions, serving as a focal point to the site and building approach. And incorporating landscaping buffers, as can be seen here between the building and the walkway, reinforces that privacy which is required when we have tenant suites, along this facade. So stepping back, we can see the interface between the building and the conveniently located e-mobility device storage enclosure with its defining standing metal seam roof and perforated metal or mesh panels. And if we move around to the south end of the building, to the rear amenity space, we see the dark wood tone material wrapping the building with the glazing pattern continuing all the way down the back facade. And if we take a slightly closer look, we see the overhang condition, which marks the access point to the outdoor amenity space and which is mirrored from the condition on the front of the building. The quiet, contemporary sophistication and simplicity of the building design has been carefully considered to enhance the connection to the site, which is further then reinforced by the landscape design. And with that, I would like to pass it over to Michael Patterson with Perry & Associates to discuss our landscape design.
Thank you, Kaylin. Kaylin, just to confirm, you're going to run through the landscape portion. I'll just tell you to switch. Is that right? Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Thank you, design panel. It's great to be here to present this project and the landscape. So just to spend a little bit of time on this plan, the building is situated in such a way that we actually have quite a generous sort of front yard and a very generous backyard. And the backyard would be fully enclosed with solid fencing. And the front yard would be enclosed along the two sides, but open at the moment to Mackenzie Road. And so what we've done is as you can see from the darker toned green, we've provided a planted buffer to provide a kind of a welcoming streetscape edge along the Mackenzie frontage. And we've introduced in placement of trees, we've tried to sort of be mindful of fire smart requirements and placement of trees further away from the building, just for preventative reasons. And what you don't see off the plan here is to the north, the site looks towards the Petroglyph Park, and there's really quite a beautiful treed edge that the residents look out to. And so we've tried to bring that forest across number 1 highway into the site. And so the trees that we've used here, the darker green depicts evergreen trees, and the lighter green depicts deciduous trees. As Kaylin mentioned, we've looked to provide planting to separate where we have pathways adjacent to interior units. So that's the pathway that connects from the lobby towards the scooter storage. And then in the backyard as well, that looping walkway, it does loop in front of a few residential units. And so similarly, we've pulled that pathway away, and then we've kind of planted a green buffer to separate and transition those units. We've also, and I should point out that one of the things that we are looking to have as part of this project is a welcome post integrated at the front of the project. And I think Kaylin mentioned sort of the addition of First Nations artwork on the building itself, but the welcome post will be something in the landscape that will reach out to visitors and as they arrive to the project. Material-wise, we've tried to go with very durable materials, thinking primarily to use concrete for pathways. We wanted to make sure it's accessible, easily maintained, durable, long-lasting, and easy in the wintertime to shovel, just to make sure that the pathways are clear. In the backyard of the project, there's a large amenity deck outside of the dining room, the interior dining room, and we've located urban gardening as well adjacent to that for residents. And an important element of these supportive housing projects is often what's called a covered area for a covered smoking area, and so we've provided that and made sure that it's offset a minimum of 6 meters from the building and from the property line edges, but also in view of the building. So sight lines and maintaining views of all parts of the site are a very important part of this project. And so that is part of the reason for that very open, sort of generous lawn area, so that the sight lines are very clear. And you can see that we've integrated seating along the pathway, but everything is quite visible from the building. Next slide, please, Caitlin. For nighttime use, we've provided lighting. We've utilized post-top lighting, and we've also integrated lighting generally on the building for both the front yard and the rear yard, so that at night it's quite usable. Residents will be allowed to go out into the rear yard at different times, and so we want to make sure that it's well lit and secure for that use. Next slide. There are a number of existing trees. There's 4 existing trees, and unfortunately, one of them happens to be in conflict with the building. But we are retaining 3 fairly sizable fir trees in the backyard, and which kind of again, and then we've supplemented that with additional trees. Next slide. Grading wise, the site is generally pretty flat. You'll see we cut a couple of sections through here. So the site is flat. It makes for easy walking, secure walking, no pathways, really even close to 5%. So, you know, kind of generally 2% pathways, which makes for a fairly safe movement around the site. Next slide. Planting. We're still sort of working on the planting. The goal here is to provide as native a plant list as possible, but also to provide some interest. But our goal here would probably be to look at shrinking the plant list down, making sure that the plants are providing interest through the seasons, are generally native and certainly drought tolerant, and in this area. Next slide. And these are just a couple of sections. So the top section shows the relationship of that smoking pavilion to the building, and you can see kind of the very clear sight lines from inside the building out to that pathway along the edge and the fenced perimeter of the site. And the lower section, you can see the backdrop of those 3 existing trees that we're retaining behind, some distance behind the smoking pavilion. But you can see that it's a fairly wide open, and again, the sight lines are very clear, clearly maintained. Next slide. And this is through the front section. So again, generally a pretty flat site, and you know, a very generous entry at the front of the building with space provided for bikes, and making sure that there's plenty of width for movement at the front door. I think that is the end of our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Kaylin, for the very thoughtful and well put together presentation. I'm going to open up the panel for questions, if they have any questions for the city, for Lania. Okay, and no one appears to have any questions. So we'll begin with the comments and questions and recommendations. Can we start with Harry today, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. The landscaping's great. I really like what you've done with especially with such an odd-shaped lot. That's fantastic. Form and character, I like it. It's great. The only comment I would have is on the roof pan and your elevations, there are many exposed HVAC units, and you have your elevator overrun. In the form and character design guidelines, section 2221, they should be screened and integrated into the design of the building. So maybe you could address that somehow. Other than that, looks like a great project, and thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Harry. Alex, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Yeah, I mean, my comments really are just, I think the artwork, integrating artwork will be very, it'll make the building more interesting. I do like the wood panels, and I do think it will connect well with the surroundings. I think overall it's a nice infill project. It's a good use of space in this part of town, and I like how you laid it out with it's like kind of interactive with like the trail or the pathway, you know, and then the grass in the middle, and then that urban garden is nice as well. So yeah, those are really just my comments, and yeah, thanks again.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, Jessica?
Hello. I think this is a great project as well. Every aspect of it is very thoughtful and intentional. Accessible and durable pathways. The building cladding is really appropriate and calm. I think that's important. I think lighting is really important, and that's also been addressed really well, along with the sight lines. Thank you. It's a project that Nanaimo needs, and it's just really, really well considered. My only comment is in line with one of the staff comments, and that is in regards to the facade facing the highway. New development that's adjacent to or visible from provincial highways should be designed to provide an attractive facade. So in that elevation, it's a bit bland and boring with nothing going on there. And on the opposite elevation, there is artwork. So I'm not sure if it's appropriate to put artwork on the highway side elevation of the building. And if not, then perhaps adding something to make the building more attractive from that elevation. That would be my only comment. Thank you very much. Everything else it's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And I don't think there's any more panel members that are going to be providing comments. So just from me, so I really like this project. I think the fire smart requirements that Michael addressed is wonderful to see here on design panel, and the urban gardening, and just I think the lawn, usually, you know, lawns are, it's just perfect for this project. So this is great. I wanted to echo what Jessica said regarding the facade facing the highway. So I think that's probably something that should be addressed, whether it's in the form of artwork. I think that would be wonderful, actually, to see, give it a bit more visibility from the highway in a good way, would be wonderful. And then just a comment from me regarding that same facade. The windows on that side probably should be triple pane to keep it quieter, because it is a fairly loud highway. Just on that side where there is no landscape buffer. So because the units are fairly, actually quite compact. They're what, 350 square foot units? They're very small. So to keep the noise from going into those units and bouncing around would be really important. And the other comment that I have, I noticed in the lighting plan there is one uplight, and I'm assuming that's to light up the totem pole. Is that correct, Michael? Okay. So I don't know how tall the totem pole is, but it would be nice to maybe integrate it into the front entry even more than it is, and maybe that way, I don't know, but I'm trying to, I know uplights are really important for totem poles, but it would be nice to have a downlight maybe for, I don't know, if it's near the front entrance. I'm just, it's for the bird friendly lighting to kind of, if it's pointed right at the totem pole, it should be okay, but yeah, anyway, sorry, it's not very coherent, my, my comment. Anyway, so I think there actually isn't very much. There's only 4 comments that I see summarized. Number 1, consider screening and integrating the HVAC and elevator overrun. That's pretty important. Number 2, for the facade facing the highway to be more unique and to maybe integrate some art as well. And number 3 is to consider sound buffering the upper floors of those units, so maybe triple pane glass. And number 4, maybe moving the totem pole closer to the main entrance so that it can be lit from the canopy or somewhere where the lights are still pointing downwards and it's pointing more to the entry. Okay, so I believe those are 4 comments altogether. And there's, as far as I understand, there's nothing else. So can I get a motion to accept this project with the following recommendations? Harry? And seconder? Jessica? Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you very much, Kaylin and Michael, for the wonderful presentation. Okay, and yeah, thanks.
Appreciate your comments.
All right, and now we can invite Angie back into the room. And we will start with our presentation for 309 Hillcrest, please. Or sorry, Lanya's introduction for 309 Hillcrest.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I believe Angie should be joining us shortly here. All right. The second development permit application that I'm introducing this evening is for DP 1396, and this is a multifamily development at 309 Hillcrest Avenue, consisting of 160 units in 3 buildings. The property is zoned residential corridor, Core 1, and is designated within Development Permit Area 8, our Form and Character Development Permit. And so, of course, our Form and Character Development Permit guidelines apply. A variance is proposed to reduce the required parking from 188 spaces to 111 spaces. And I'm happy to take any questions following the applicant's presentation.
Thank you, Lanya. And who will be presenting tonight?
Yeah, good evening. It's Christine Lintott, the project architect, and I'll be co-presenting with our landscape architect, Vanessa Walton, who's also joining us today.
Okay, go ahead, Christine.
Okay. Share my screen, make sure I get the right one here. Okay. All right. Well, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to share our design work for the property located at 309 Hillcrest Avenue. We do have our design team, our whole team here this evening, just in case there's any questions, including my co-presenter, Vanessa Walton. We also have the project's owner and operator, Pacifica Housing, here with the CEO, Carolina Ibarra. We have Townline Housing Solutions with us, with an assortment of folks that can answer any questions from a construction perspective, development perspective. And we also included our civil engineer in the conversation, just in case there was any conversation that needed some clarification. And I also just want to acknowledge my colleague, Michael Fraser, has joined us as well, and he's responsible for producing a number of the visualizations that we're going to be sharing with you today. Okay. I just want to go through the context here a little bit. This is just an aerial orientation of the site in a broader context and its relationship to the downtown core, and of course the Island Highway to the west. Zooming in, this is an aerial orientation of the site relative to Vancouver Island University Nanaimo campus, situating this project within the University District neighborhood. And finally, zooming in once more, this aerial orientation of the site shows the proximity to Nanaimo District Secondary School and the Nanaimo Aquatic Center to the west, with the arterial road Wakasaya Avenue running north-south. Foster Street runs along the south boundary of the site, with Hillcrest Avenue providing site access from the north. The location is obviously within Nanaimo's urban containment boundary. The existing property represented by this survey, overlaid on an aerial, illustrates the existing 10 townhome blocks, which contain 34 units. The survey also highlights the surface paving leading to carports, the placement of existing trees, which are largely located around the site perimeter, and the location specifically of a statutory right-of-way, which is here, through the site. And it's a constraint, that's why I just want to highlight it to you. And this contains a water main, which bisects the site from the Foster-Hillcrest intersection and connects to properties to the east. Also notable in this location is an existing bus stop along Wakasaya, just north of the Foster-Wakasaya intersection. Okay, the proposed development replaces the existing townhouses with 160 new units with a mix of unit types in 3 buildings. Building placement along Wakasaya and Foster frontages facilitates direct firefighting access, delivery and visitor access, BC Hydro servicing access, and a prioritization of pedestrian movements into the site. The 3 building lobbies are clustered around a tidy entry plaza, which is here, which allows short-term vehicle circulation while prioritizing pedestrian movement. Bicycle parking for residents is adjacent to the building lobbies inside, highly visible and accessible facilities which promote safety and encourage active modes of transportation. There's a network of paths along and through the site, which support pedestrian and bicycle movements, both for the residents and for the broader community. Surface parking is provided for resident vehicles, with careful consideration put into the current demand as well as the anticipated shift away from the individual car ownership. The surface parking areas are intentionally flexible and can be repurposed in the future as vehicle parking needs evolve. Resident vehicles and waste management services have access from Hillcrest to the north, effectively separating these functions from building lobbies and ensuring accommodation for waste collection vehicles on site. This is a visualization of the approach with a view looking northwest with Foster Street in the foreground and Wakasaya Avenue along the left. So here. From the entry plaza, semi-public pedestrian pathways link common outdoors areas, waste facilities, and vehicle parking. These paths have been designed to allow for maximum visibility from residential units, promoting overall site safety through SEPTED design principles. Vanessa's going to speak a little bit more to this. This is a visualization of the approach with a view looking northwest with Foster Street in the with Wakasaya, Wakasaya in the foreground here. And you can see the multi-use path, which Vanessa will cover off in a little more detail here as well. I'm going to hand it over to Vanessa now and just have you guide me when you want me to change the slides.
Thanks, Christine. Hi, everyone. I'm Vanessa Walton. I'm the landscape architect with Lanark, and I'm really pleased to be here this evening to share more about the landscape architectural approach on the project with you. So I'll just start by providing a bit of an overview of our landscape site planning approach. So as Christine mentioned, our planning process really included close collaboration between all of the disciplines, really thinking about the relationship of the buildings and the landscape, both on the site and the surrounding neighborhood. So one of our main goals with the site planning process was to retain as much of the existing tree canopy as possible, which a lot of that you'll see is along the edges of the site. So really creating inviting site edges that buffer some of the residential properties on the west and east sides of the site, but also along Wakasaya and Foster, creating really porous inviting edges to invite residents and the community in. One of the key design objectives that we spoke a lot about during our design process was creating really a park-like setting that fits with Nanaimo. So celebrating some of the natural areas that surround the University District with our planting palette, and I'll speak a little bit about that on future slides, but really it's the planting palette that's aiming to create a strong sense of place for this site. Another key objective, as Christine mentioned, was to create generous, flexible, and accessible gathering spaces that are really quite well connected by pedestrian paths as well as the multimodal path. So as Christine mentioned, we've got the entry plaza off of Foster Avenue to the south of buildings B and C. We looked at a few different iterations of this, but landed on this one, which is really flanked by and framed by planting areas on both sides that we feel will also help to kind of anchor the buildings in the landscape. For the entry plaza, we're using more human scaled materials in an effort to make it not feel just like a parking lot, but more like an entry plaza, so using pavers. And then there's seating areas and bike parking for both residents and visitors adjacent to each of the building entries. Staying on the theme of kind of plazas and gathering spaces, we've got the amenity patio that's between buildings A and B. That's located quite centrally for all residents to use. It's directly adjacent to the indoor amenity space at building B to allow for some indoor-outdoor kind of spill out between the amenity zones. Really, this is intended to be a flexible gathering space for residents to use and kind of life to happen. So we've got a communal picnic table and some flexible seating for small groups to gather. So thinking about things like neighbors or friends meeting for a cup of coffee, maybe a toddler birthday party, or small gatherings. And adjacent to that, we've got an open lawn space that can kind of act as an extension of that outdoor room. So place if there are young families living in the buildings where little ones might kick a ball or friends could have a picnic, just kind of that informal use of the landscape in the site. And then Christine mentioned, but one of the key aspects is the multi-use path. So the 3-meter wide barrier-free path that's really running, connecting from Wakasaya all the way through and up to Hillcrest. So we're creating separate areas for different modes. Being the pedestrian and cycle use having their own pathway and separated from vehicle use, and well connected to the bus stop on Wakasaya. So we see that really being an activator in terms of people potentially coming off the bus and using the path to get not only to the buildings on this site, but to the rest of the neighborhood as well. And we anticipate that path will be concrete. Again, this site is relatively flat, so barrier-free and easy to maintain. And then it will be flanked by pedestrian scale lighting. And then the parking areas will also be lit. I think we can move to the next slide. So this is sort of the corner view if you're approaching the site from Wakasaya at the Wakasaya and Foster intersection, showing that bus stop I just mentioned, and really how we're trying to create kind of a buffer to the neighborhood, but also inviting you in. So strong street tree planting along Foster. There are electrical wires that exist on Wakasaya, so smaller trees under those, and really good sight lines along that multi-use path. Head to the next slide. So bringing you along the path, here you are on the north side of building A. There are a couple smaller pedestrian or bike path connections leading to the main path, but this is really showing you our planting approach, which is meant to be quite low growing, resilient, low native species, and really good sight lines at some of these key corners along the path. Can hand back to the next slide. And this one, we're on the south side of the development along Foster Street. Gives you a look at all 3 building entries in that entry plaza. And this one, we're sort of trying to speak to that neighborhood and edge condition of the design, which we've got a lawn boulevard with street trees flanking the sidewalk, and then the buildings are really wrapped with that native planting palette and a lot of trees to make it feel like a park-like setting. And then this one, you're on the entry plaza looking at the pedestrian path that is public access. So really an interesting space between buildings B and C that draws you through the site and over to Hillcrest to the north. And some of the planting between the buildings as well, meant to really feel like a green spine, and then looking at integrating some columnar tree species, so the residents of buildings B and C can look out to the tree canopy between the buildings. And then I'll roll through this slide quite quickly. If there are questions on any of the furnishings, I'm happy to answer them, but the intent is really that we've selected a palette that is meant to feel quite natural and warm and residential in character, use of wood and comfortable materials that are quite easy to maintain. Also, we've selected some furnishings that we've used in other projects in downtown Nanaimo and the University District, so that there's kind of a cohesive Nanaimo feel to the furnishings palette. And then one thing I haven't touched upon is that this shows the perimeter fencing, like I mentioned just at the beginning. So 6 foot tall residential feel wooden fence, just only on the edges of the site that are adjacent to our residential neighbors, but Wakasai and Foster would be quite open. Then moving now to the north edge of the site. So again, the 3 meter wide multi-use path is bringing you through and connecting to Hillcrest. I'll just mention a little gateway moment we've got on the north side of buildings B and C. This is a bit of a mixing zone between potentially cyclist and pedestrian traffic coming along the central spine. So we've integrated just a different colored concrete as sort of a visual cue for that, as well as some benches at this gateway into the site. You'll see that we've got the earth bins located just to the north of building C and with really good access from Hillcrest Avenue. So for waste collection, just coming straight off of Hillcrest and not having to come further into the site. And then I'll note on the next slide, these we actually haven't surrounded with a garbage enclosure. Reasoning for that is if you look at the sight lines with bicycles coming through and around them, we'd like to keep that quite open at that corner. And also finding that sometimes when elements are enclosed, that can actually introduce more SEPTED concerns. So keeping it quite open, recognizing that these earth bins are quite kind of tidy and simple looking. Christine, if you don't actually mind going back one slide before the view. Yeah, one more. Yeah, perfect. I'll just mention that we've got the designated smoking area to the west of building B. And so that's located 6 meters away from any building windows, air intakes, and also tried to be quite central to the 3 buildings, recognizing that this is kind of a well-used space in these developments and often a place where neighbors can come together. So quite central, but also not visible from Wakasai or from the residential neighbors. And one other thing I wanted to mention on the previous slide, Christine, sorry, was just the difference in materials there coming across the parking lot. You can see that visual contrast for bikes coming through the area where there could also be vehicles traveling. So just another cue for both modes that you're crossing through a mixing zone there. Yes, and then this is just a view of those earth bins on a similarly scaled residential project. So we do find they're more attractive than your average garbage collection area. Hopping now to planting palette. So again, the planting approach was really looking to retain a lot of that existing mature tree canopy, but then integrating quite a good biodiverse mix of deciduous and coniferous tree species throughout the site. And really looking to the planting palette to be developing that sense of place. So utilizing native plants to the Nanaimo area, mostly low height species for SEPTED considerations, with higher shrubs only really in select locations to either screen or anchor planting beds or the building. We've used limited lawn, mostly for ecological value. So looking to integrate more native planting zones and lawn in select areas where it makes sense from kind of a use standpoint. And then we've also integrated a series of rain gardens throughout the site that we're working with Civil and Luke to coordinate. So those would be used to filter and slow stormwater and reduce runoff. And so those are the areas that are kind of teal in color. And you'll see the planting character for those would be mostly native sedges and rushes and some flowers like Oregon iris, which is that purple one shown in the photo. We're really looking to integrate a diverse mix of plants on this site, thinking about the varied microclimate conditions that occur here from full sun to deep shade, and as well how the palette will look throughout the seasons. And so here's our plant schedule. I won't go through it in detail, but happy to answer any questions on that. Again, really just trying to think about right plant for right place and utilizing native and adaptive plants. So with that, I'll pass it back to Christine. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Vanessa. Architecturally, the buildings adopt a really clean, durable, and efficient design. Rather than being seen as individual buildings within the lot, they present a cohesive residential aesthetic within a park-like environment as the buildings are nested within an urban forest. The building design really addresses seismic resilience, energy performance requirements, and stringent BC housing guidelines. These are urban residential buildings, shaping the public realm rather than object buildings that really constitute what we would call remarks, which are perhaps more suitable for public and institutional buildings. The design uses material variation through subtle shifts in texture and color, providing visual interest without disrupting consistency in massing and detailing. The proposed use of durable materials and a modestly articulated building form affords a resilient residential architecture of clarity and timeless expression. By avoiding arbitrary articulation and an eclectic range of materials, the building is not tied to random design fads or attempts to break down the massing, with the unintended consequences of poor operational and maintainability issues. These are modest, tidy, clear, and well-designed. The proposal seeks to provide a well-mannered backdrop to the landscape moves of placemaking, both for the residents and for the broader community. Thank you for the opportunity to share the vision for the site, and we welcome any questions.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you, Vanessa, for your presentation. And now, if anybody has any questions for the city, for Lanya. Okay, I have a question for you, Lanya. So we're asking here for a variance of from 180 to 111 parking stalls. And so from what I'm seeing, it's all surface parking, and I'm just wondering why there isn't any parking below the buildings, which would open up and create more of a open space where maybe kids can play.
Thank you, Chair. I will attempt to answer, but I think maybe the applicant may also want to answer. Obviously, this is at the applicant's discretion, their target market for the occupants of the building. And so there may be a need, I think, from their perspective to maintain affordability in the design process. So there are some limiting constraints there, as well as in order to maximize the housing units on the site. That's how they're proposing it to be. And I'm not sure if the applicant wanted to respond to that, but I'll pass it over to you, Chair.
I think, yeah, thank you for that. And that's consistent with our thinking for sure. And I also want to acknowledge too that Pacifica Housing, and I welcome if Carolina wants to chime in here, but has done an analysis in terms of what their actual use case is for these kinds of buildings and these kinds of target residents. And they do have records and documentation, data available that really tells them what that ultimate parking to unit ratio needs to be. And so we're striking that sweet spot. So we're not over parking the project. And we're really accommodating the target residents for this kind of development. The other thing I want to acknowledge too is that in municipalities like Nanaimo, where growth is happening at a rapid pace, we are seeing a transition away from the single family, the ownership of single family vehicles. And so tapping into different modalities, bicycles, obviously bus transportation and car share rather than single car ownership is very active, and it's happening very quickly. And what surface parking allows us to do is pivot at that as that transition continues. So our thinking is that they, rather than trying to repurpose underground dark spaces, that you're actually repurposing the surface of the site in the future. And that might be aspirational, but I think as designers, we have to create those invitations for the repurposing of site as our cities continue to change.
Thank you, Christine, and thank you, Lania. That's great. Okay, so we will start with, does anybody else have any questions for the city? Oh, Jessica? Yeah.
Just a quick question. In the introduction by Lania, it says that the site is currently developed as subsidizing housing with 34 units. And it's been referenced the target market. So I'm curious if this new development is also subsidized and who your potential tenants are, and if it is a rental only or ownership and rental or mixed. Would like to know what the composition of the building's going to be. If they, I don't really know what degree they are subsidized currently, but if it is considered maybe affordable housing, it'd be a shame to not continue to have affordable housing. So that's my question. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I can leave that to the applicant.
Yeah, I can answer that if that's okay. And I think the development team can talk to the exact proportions, but we've applied for funding to the community, to the BC Housing CHF fund, to the Community Housing Fund, which is a mix of deep subsidy units, rent geared to income units for people with a bit of a higher income, but still very low income, and then middle income earners. So we're actually expanding the offering of affordable units to a broader range of people. So we will be protecting, so to speak, the number of units that are currently available. We've also made sure that we've incorporated family units as well, so we don't have a loss, but we're adding substantially more. So there will be people who are at the higher end. I think 20% are middle income earners, but everybody else would either be rent geared to income or only able to pay $500 a month. So it is a very, in terms of affordability, it will absolutely add a lot more than we currently have.
Thank you, Carolina. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or comments for the city? Okay, thank you, Lania. Okay, so we'll begin with a panel. Angie, would you please begin?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation. This development is actually just down the road from me here, so it's always exciting to see something close to home. I really like the color differentiation between the buildings. I think that kind of sets them apart for each one. I think the building entrances could be slightly more pronounced just for wayfinding, but I think that kind of the thought that's been put into how they're laid out now is really great. It maybe just is a matter of having that overhang project a little further or something like that. Yeah, I appreciate the rationale provided for the parking variance. This is a great area for bikes. There's a lot of networks here that you can connect to, and I think I actually just took a drive down to the current community there today, and it looks like there's just a lot of children, a lot of bikes around. I think having that multi-use path is going to really allow for a great place separated from traffic where kids can learn to bike and all of those things. So I think actually on that note, one of my thoughts was if there's an opportunity to expand that multi-use path to maybe have a loop around the buildings or perhaps even just to connect the bike storage areas on building B and C. I think that would be helpful just to kind of expand that further and have a bit more options there. Also, they currently have a little playground on the site, and I think it'd be great if there's a space where a small playground could be incorporated into this. It's an area that's really surrounded by a lot of beautiful parks, so I think it doesn't have to be anything complicated, but even just having kind of some natural elements of, logs and things like that that can create like a natural play space as well, that could be something to consider. And then I think, oh yes, just for the short-term bike parking, it looks like some of it will be partially covered by the entryways, but if it's possible to make those fully covered, I think that would be create a bit more use there, and it looks like for the most part, most of them are nearly there anyhow, so that shouldn't be too, it shouldn't be too big of a deal either way. My only question was just if there has been some consideration about the light coming over the fences to the residential properties that are adjacent to the parking lot. And I know there's a fence there, so I guess something to consider is just to make sure that there might not be, if there's people coming and going late at night, that there's not light kind of coming across to those residential properties, but yes, I think that's all of my comments, and I think this will be a great addition to the neighborhood, and it's great to see more units going in there. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Angie. Okay, and Jessica?
Hi. I think this is also a really great high density development project. And I also really like the variance, but slight differentiation between the color of the facades of each of the building. I think it's really clever and subtle, but appropriate. Really glad to hear that it is going to be subsidized. I think that answers my question about the number of small units and also the small 3-bedroom units. With subsidized housing, 3-bedroom units, I think, are just in desperate need. And they are quite small, but appropriate if, but do the job. I mean, I looked at the layout of each of the units, and they're very well considered. So, I think it's a great project. My comments do mirror the staff recommendations. The surface parking, that the surface parking lots could include pedestrian crossing points. And I heard in the presentation that the surface parking it can be flexible to change as needs change in the future. But as it stands right now, if that parking lot is full, I feel like it really lacks pedestrian movement through the parking lot. And so if it were possible to integrate just maybe through some means of indicating where it's safe for pedestrians to move across the parking spots, because it's a long way to go through the center, the driving path. I just think that for safety, it would be nice to have some other pedestrian pathways across the parking areas. And if it is realized that as those parking spots aren't needed, that could change. You could have more of them in the future, but at least to start, I think that could be a safety issue, not being able to have pedestrian crossing in the parking lot. The one I'm not fond of the garbage area. I feel like when you enter the lot, when you enter the site, the first thing you look at is those garbage cans. And I know that the staff recommendations were that they should be screened or in a building, and you have addressed that. I am wondering, and the other aspect about the garbage is that it should be reasonably accessible by all residents, and building A is just way flung out to the west relative to where the garbage area is. And so I'm wondering if it was possible to relocate that garbage area to the far west of the parking area. Just a thought. It's that way when you're coming in to the parking area, you're not walking on a bicycle or driving. You're not staring right at the open garbage bins. And it is a little bit further for the waste vehicles to come and collect the garbage, but it is just a straight shot to the far west. And if it's out to the far end of the parking lot there, then it's just not so much in your face when you enter the site, but then it's also a little bit closer to building A2 via the other the paths and the walkways and such. So the garbage bins themselves are more attractive than your typical bins, I guess, but I think that garbage bins do get vandalized. People go through them, whether they're looking for cans or so they can become untidy if they're left open and exposed. Illegal dumping is a thing. So I don't know, just kind of moving them in a way that they're not so visible. And then if they were on the west side of that parking lot, then perhaps there would be an ability to screen them a bit. So that's my thoughts about the garbage bins. And I fully support the parking variance. Having lived in a BC housing co-op for 15 years, I know that subsidized housing has much smaller single vehicle parking than other developments, and I really hope that Nanaimo gets to be a place where people are using car shares and bike shares and everything other than their car. So I support the variance. I think it's really appropriate in this development. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jessica. Okay, Alex.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I agree wholeheartedly with Jessica's comments on the garbage bins. You know, they're the first thing you see when you pull in. They do look nicer than like the standard garbage bin, but yeah, I think if there's a way you can relocate them, I think that would be, you know, I think that would be a good thing. I really like the project, how it has that multimodal path that cuts through the property and it connects to the other side of the neighborhood. I think it's a very it's very cool. I like the native plants, the rain gardens. Yeah, I think it's going to be a good project. So that's yeah, I look forward to seeing this being built. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Alex. And Harry?
Yeah, thank you. Basically, the other panel members have addressed the concerns with the parking. Was explained very well. I totally agree with Jess with the garbage cans there, like 100%. I really like the material palette on the siding. I haven't seen that type of siding before, so that's gonna be a great accent for sure. Yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Harry. Okay, and oh, I just have a question. It's not really a recommendation or anything, but just a question for Christine regarding buildings A and B. I noticed that they're quite close together at the base where they kind of form an L. And I wondered if it was ever considered just to combine them into kind of like a open L-shaped one building, just so that you'd have a little bit more greenery in the middle. Was that something you guys looked at?
Yeah, great question. It's a building area issue, so it comes down to the building code. And if we exceed that 1,500 square meters, we end up getting into firewalls and all kinds of complexity if we were to actually combine them into a larger footprint. So what we're really trying to do here is create really efficient building volumes that are shaping space and doing it in such a way that they are defining that kind of those paths and connections. So in our placing of building B, A and B, we've really tried to situate them so that there's sort of a limited overlap at that really tight point. and that the units themselves are looking out in a different orientation in order to not create that overlook. So it was a fine balance on our part, trying to overcome kind of that technical requirement of creating a combined volume.
Yeah, I can see it's difficult, tricky. Yeah, okay. And then one more question. Do you have any sort of amenity space on the interior of the building that's indoor?
Yeah, we do. And specifically, each of the buildings contains an inventory of amenity space. Building B specifically has that direct connection out to that kind of central outdoor, kind of indoor-outdoor amenity in the center of the site. So every building has sort of its own, as well as having that kind of combined common space on the site.
So is there an interior kind of amenity room somewhere for each of the buildings?
There is, and it's located, sorry, I'm just going to try to get some plans in front of me. There is a complement of amenity spaces provided for each of the buildings on the site. Yeah, and I don't have the plans in front of me, so I can't describe exactly where they're located.
That's okay. It's just what you're saying is just a room somewhere, right? On the upper floor, or on the ground floor, somewhere where, like you can have like a party room or somewhere you can sign out for.
Yeah, the intention for the overall development is to actually have the focus of those kind of, as you say, booking out for a party room, to have that be in Building B. Buildings A and C have a smaller amenity provision, and it's really focused around kind of the entrances to the buildings and proximate to the bicycle storage areas. Building B is intended to be kind of the central, as you say, bookable or reservable space for tenants to be able to, host an event or that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I would recommend to add to provide maybe a larger, more dedicated space. Usually in the past, when we've worked on large buildings or large assemblies of buildings like this, when it's 160 units, you would have a substantial amenity space provided for people to use, whether it's in one building or separated in between all three, but it should be something more than just a part of the lobby space or something like that. So that's what I would love to see, so that when it's raining out, which it is quite a bit, that people have still somewhere to go. Okay, so with that one comment from me, that makes, I believe, 8 comments, right? 8 recommendations. So I'll list them now. And thank you so much for the presentation. Definitely, this is the type of housing that we need, and it's wonderful. It's so close to the aquatic center, so there are places for people to go. But yeah, it's great. Okay, so we'll go through the 8 recommendations. 1, consider making the entrances more pronounced. Whether it's making the overhang more projected or in some other way. Number 2, consider expanding the multi-use path into a loop. I think this would be actually a really wonderful idea to very simply and without using up too much more space to create an outdoor amenity space for small children, because like Angie said, a lot of kids, they love riding their bikes, and in a loop, it's fine. They love that kind of thing. So that would really create a good space for them, because currently there doesn't seem to be anything really that good. Sorry, I have a cold and I have the sniffles. I almost didn't make it today. Okay, number 3, consider incorporating a small playground. So that would piggyback onto that. Number 4, consider covering the entrance bike parking. Okay. Number 5, ensure on-site lighting is not affecting adjacent properties. Number 6, consider adding pedestrian crosswalks through the parking. Number 7, consider relocating the garage to the far west of the site. And number 8, expand on the interior amenity space. And if any of the panel members have anything to add at this point, please let me know if I missed anything. Okay, Harry, yes?
The garbage.
Yep, that was number 7. Relocate
that
the
one.
garbage to the far west of the site. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. Yeah, no, that was a really good one. Thank you, Jessica, for bringing that one up. Okay, yep, so I believe that's 8 items. Thank you again very much to Christine and Vanessa for their presentation. At this point, it's our time to vote. So can I get a motion to accept this project with the variances as presented and with the recommendations? I saw a hand from Harry and seconder Alex, and all in favor? Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And now can I get a motion to finish today's meeting, today's design advisory panel? Thank you, Harry, seconder Alex, all in favor? Okay, wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Have a